there was a man named Angelon, hung 3 red shirt on his clothesline. He had a goat and they tied him hard right by the neck in his backyard. That goat got loose about 9:30, and he ate those shirts right off that line. Poor Angelon, he got mad and said, wish to goodness sake that goat was dead. So he took him out to the railroad track and he tied him there upon his back. That doggone goat, 'twas done in vain. He coughed up those shirts and flagged that train. The Gospels are poems. Each one of the Gospels, Mark, Matthew, Luke, John, they're a poem, and together the 4 make a poem. And each part of each of the Gospels, each 3 or 5 lines, or however there may be, they're a poem too. And of course, it's not the kind of poetry that shows up in that song, and most of the songs that all the songs we know in modern times, but they're poems. And because it's a poem, it means more than what we ordinarily get out of the gospel when we read it with our ordinary minds, our ordinary eyes, and see that it looks like prose. The word for the day is relenting, which I hope you can read there. And I'm going to read called something about Jesus' baptism. That's what most everybody thinks it's about. And it is about that, but just on one level. There's all kinds of, there's at least 7 levels to the Bible and to every story in the Bible. So the story says, it's been talking about John the Baptizer. And then it says, then Jesus appeared. He came from Galilee to the Jordan to be baptized by John. Now, John the Baptizer, usually call him John the Baptist, doesn't mean he was a Baptist. There weren't any Baptists in those days, but he baptized people, John did. And baptizing meant getting them to come to a certain emotional place, mental and emotional and spiritual, where they would regret the things they had done to people and would cry, usually, and be washed in John's favorite place. Anywhere where there was water was okay, but John's favorite place was a place in the Jordan River near the Red Sea, where the water is very brackish, very full of minerals. And Jesus came there to participate in what we would call a retreat or something like that, a healing retreat, to be baptized by John. But John tried to dissuade him with these words, "It is I who need baptism from you, and yet you come to me." That means that in John's theology, John's beliefs, doctrines, the cleanest person baptized the others. The cleanest person cleansed the others by saying the prayers and leading them in the dedication and all that kind of thing. That was John's way of understanding it. He said, "It is I who need baptism from you, and yet you come to me." But Jesus replied, "Leave it like this for the time being, for it is fitting that we should in this way do all that uprightness demands." Then John gave in to him. And gave in is a simple way of saying, relent. And when Jesus had been baptized, he at once came up from the water, and suddenly the heavens opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming down on him. And suddenly there was a voice from heaven, "This is my Son, the Beloved, my favor rests on him." So, if we read that, like I just did, and we read it as prose, just because it's written in a paragraph, and this is the way almost all of our texts are written today. There's a little indentation, and then there's the first line of the text, and then the next, and there's no particular ending over here. It's just that's the end of the space, and so they come back over here, and they do some more text, and then come back over here, and it gets to the end and stops. That's the way it's read, and everything I ever saw until I started finding out about the poem, the love song, the words to the love song. If we're going to read it like prose, then our mind, our imagination, our analysis is going to focus on the things that seem of interest to us. For instance, the dove coming down out of heaven and landing, and then there's a debate about it says he saw the dove come down. What he? Is that John the Baptizer that sees it? Or is that Jesus that sees it? And then it says, a voice was heard from heaven, "This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him." And those are the things, most sort of Hollywood type images that focus our attention and make us decide, well, that's where we put our effort to understanding it, and it makes us decide that that's the most important part because it's the one that captures our imagination. He relented. That's what the story, the poem, wants us to focus on, is he relented. Because the poem is about 42 spiritual experiences that you and I and everybody else is taken through by life events, by the Spirit creating and guiding those life events. And the point of the poem now is he relented. And relenting is not something that you can do, or at least not very easily. It's tough to give up our way of thinking, and that's exactly what this story is about. John the Baptizer has a way of thinking about what's supposed to happen. He's supposed to get people ready for the coming of the Messiah by leading them through this This baptism process, this cleansing process. So fixed on that he doesn't recognize that this is the Messiah. I'm talking about the story now, that showed up in front of him. But he relents, even though in my opinion we can't really relent. All the important things in our lives, we really can't do it. Whatever free will we may have doesn't extend to being able to do the really important things like repent or relent or have faith but yet he does relent, or rather relenting happens. The story describes what happens in your life and in mine, where we give in and we do it the other person's way. And that might be our parents or our spouse or somebody. But we give in over against our will. We don't want to give in. We want to convince them to do it our way. But it happens in our lives that we relent. Okay, so I said every story in Matthew's Gospel has to do with an analogous story in the Old Testament saga. And this is story number 8. It's about relenting. It's the eighth name in the sequence of the genealogy, as it's called. So Judah has an encounter with Tamar. This is in chapter 38 of Genesis, if you want to read it. And it's the kind of story you wonder, how did that make it into the Bible? Because it's not churchy, it's not very nice. But it's there because it happened, and because we are to learn from it. And to let the Spirit, to the extent that we can, let the Spirit carry us into and through this experience, because it does something good for us. So Tamar gets pregnant, and she has twins. And the first person, I don't even know if this is possible, but this is what the poem says. This baby puts his hand out first, and the midwife ties a red string onto it. Because then the baby pulls the hand back in, and the other baby, without the red string, gets born, comes out completely, and then the red string baby comes out. So technically, by rights, by legal rights in the Judaic system, the firstborn has the primogeniture, they call it in Europe later on. He's got all the rights and talents, and he rules over his brother. And that's true whether they're twins or ordinary siblings. But in the story, the two people's names are Perez and Zerah. And Zerah is the one with the red cord. And in subsequent chapters in the Hebrew Scriptures, Perez passes his brother in all kinds of ways. He's more rich and he has better life and a more political influence, or the Bible doesn't go into details, but it says that he surpasses his brother during their lives in every way. So the second surpasses the first. Going back to Jesus and John the Baptizer, this story then is talking about how they were like brothers, like twins even. And Jesus is stronger and better, and he's the Messiah, and John the Baptizer is not, and so on. He has all the rights. But at the moment of his baptism, he doesn't exert those rights, doesn't claim them. And when John tries to give him those rights, you should be baptizing me. You're cleaner than me. You're more holy than me. You should cleanse me. Jesus says, no, let us fulfill all righteousness. And the all righteousness in the other half of the poem, the all righteousness is the dove coming down and the voice from heaven and his being proclaimed by voice that maybe only John the Baptizer can hear it. Maybe only a few can hear it. This is my son, the beloved. Listen to him. But the middle verse says, he, John the Baptizer, relented. He was going to do it his way. He wanted to make Jesus do it his way, but he relented. How? Most of us can't stick to a diet more than 3 or 4 days. Lots of things we said we're not going to do anymore, and we end up doing them. So how does John the Baptizer relent from having things his way and instead doing it, like Jesus says, with all righteousness? Well, that's the poem. That's part of this. That's this part of the poem. That we are carried through the process of relenting. You can say we got over our selfishness or our know-it-allness or our ego or hard-headedness. If I should speak with bravest fire and have the gift all to inspire, but have not love, my words are vain as sounding brass, and will not remain. If I should give all I possess and try so hard my faith to profess, but not have love that comes from within, my life and works would soon grow dim. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts enfold, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide our every deed. By this we worship and are set free. That's from the writings of Paul. And Paul is talking about how difficult it is to let our lives be led by inner love. How hard it is to do the kind of things that the churches are always telling us that we're supposed to do, and they're right, we should do that, but we can't. We can't love others as ourselves, no matter how hard we try. And the first two verses of that song say, if we do all these things, we've given away our everything, and we're just totally dedicated to God, but we're not having inner love, then our lives are empty and vain, sounding brass. Well, how do you have inner love? Does John the Baptizer experience inner love? Or does he at least, and maybe only at least, see kind of what he's missing out on? We can't relent and let God be God, and we can be faithful followers of God by going to church real often and putting money in the plate and volunteering on the weekends, for instance, garage sale or what. We can do stuff. But if it's not inner love, then it's nothing. And the song says, but you will do it. You will relent. You will give up your selfishness. See, the thing that matters about selfishness, besides some preacher or priest said it in a sermon, or they talk about it often, the thing about it is inner peace, the end of the war that goes on in our heads and our hearts, is its own reward. And it brings us the things that they're talked about in the song. It brings us a healing of our hearts and souls. And the war only ends when the Spirit does something to us, makes us relent. There's 42 stories and 42 things that we're supposed to do and we can't, but they happen anyway. Because we're not alone here. We're not alone here or here. We're not separate from God. We're trying to make ourselves be a good person, or I'm going to have peace today if it kills me. I'm going to treat everybody the way they ought to. In fact, I'm going to treat everybody better than they ought to, those sorry people. And we may start off being all smiley face. Oh, yes, my friend. Oh, yes, my brother, my sister. But before the day's over, we've gone back to judging people and thinking of ourselves as superior to them, and at the same time being afraid because we know that we're not. And how to reach that place of peace that so many songs talk about. That's what this song is about, is how to get there to that place where inward love guides our every thought and deed. We're like the goat, Angeline's goat. We just ate those shirts because we ate those shirts. And Angeline's all mad about it, tries to kill us. And then we just cough up the shirts and flag the train, and life goes on. And I don't expect that this one story will convince you, but it's part of this lifelong song that's being played in your life and in mine, that will bring us home, that will bring us to armistice. Bring us to the place where relenting changes everything. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts enfold, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide our every deed. By this we worship. This is true worship. And are set free. And are set free. Keep coming back.